Hello and welcome back to Red Hat Summit and Ansible Fest, live from Boston here in 2025. We're closing up today and really bringing it to a crescendo. Again, what I love is when we bring together partners and customers that are really using the technology in a unique way to really further and gain ROI. And to do that, and to help me do that, one of the things that I love is I got Ed Keene, who is the Director of OpenShift Global Services for Red Hat. Welcome on board, Ed.
Thanks for having me.
Nate Mason, who's the Director of Platform Operations for SiriusXM. Welcome on board. A big fan of your company. I listen to it all the time out of the car and on the app on my phone. So love that too.
Thank you.
Great service too. And then we have Venkat. I knew I was going to screw this up because I practiced it so much, but Venkat Ramakrishnan.
Oh, you nailed it.
I tried. VP and GM from Portworx by Pure Storage. Welcome back on. You've been on a couple times, but I think the last actually Red Hat Summit, KubeCon EU, and Salt Lake City. So many times here. So you know how this goes. So let's kind of start off with, Nate, and kind of what's brought you here. I saw you in Salt Lake on the main stage. This is a lot easier. I'm a lot nicer than the 6,000 people there, that were staring at you. But what brought you here with these two folks, and how are things going with SiriusXM and your cloud native journey?
It's going very well. We started, with virtualization. We needed to diversify our hypervisor platforms. So that brings in the question, we were a rev shop as well, another Red Hat product, but we wanted to move into OpenShift both for virtualization and containerization. So having a common platform that we can maneuver microservices and VMs that, power a lot of our workloads. And so that was a good start.
So Ed, kind of from your perspective, how did Red Hat really help in this journey? Because virtualization, it started out with KubeVirt, which Red Hat, that's the upstream from OpenShift Virt. And how did you help SiriusXM kind of on this journey?
Yeah, it's funny. SiriusXM were ahead of the curve really at this point. Like when we first got started, we think about it almost a couple of years ago now. Now, 2 years later, we're having these conversations with every customer. So every single customer wants to know, how can we move off quickly but safely like our existing incumbent virtualization provider? You guys were ahead of the curve. And I think if I think about what was it that helped you get started and the critical nature of the production workloads that you're running on your existing virtualization provider, what gave you peace of mind and helped you kind of accelerate that starting point?
Well, Red Hat's our partner, so we leveraged, some Red Hat to help us out and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. We had a clear idea where we wanted to go. We just needed to get the bits and pieces working and, a clean migration, things like that. We have critical workloads running. So, it's not something you want to do extremely quickly. You want to build it right, get it done the first time correctly. And then from there, what you learn in the journey, you can move forward to do more of pure containerization and things like that. So
exactly,
virtualization was the kickoff point.
And this is where we're the critical nature of these workloads, right? Yeah. We're talking about 6 nines of availability, production manufacturing plants that are making this cutovers. How important, I'm with Red Hat Services, the services expertise, along with our trusted partners and the validated patterns that we built together, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And Venkat, you guys are announcing some really cool stuff here to really support customers like SiriusXM. What are you guys announcing here at Summit?
So today we announced Portworx for Kubernetes virtualization. It's a discounted SKU matching Red Hat OpenShift virtualization engine in pricing. So in order to help drive the total cost of ownership down in the virtualization market. Look, the rest of the virtualization market, the TCO is going way up, right? Now, Red Hat and Portworx and Pure Storage, we're driving it down further. So we're making it a lot more affordable for customers to migrate their VMs off of the legacy platform to a more modern Kubernetes-based virtualization plus containerization, right? So, and to make it affordable for customers at scale, right? So I love listening to Ed and Nate about how, we started off, proved out, like a few workloads, and now we're scaling to like more mission critical workloads, right? And that's essentially the journey we're taking our customers through, right? It's still early days, but definitely a lot of critical deployments are coming to OpenShift Virtualization and Portworx. And Nate and SiriusXM, by the way, I love the company too. It's on all my devices and all my vehicles, right? So, and SiriusXM is not just a Portworx customer. They actually run Portworx on top of pure flash arrays, and they use pure flash blades to back up all of their Kubernetes infrastructure, including all their VMs and VM data. So it's a complete turnkey solution combined with OpenShift Virtualization, right? I mean, that's like, you deploy it, start operating it, and simply forget about it. That's kind of how we're scaling it.
Yeah. And that was really important for Portworx to do that as a partner, come down to the correct virtualization, because we're not afraid to have multiple hypervisors in an organization, multiple storage. We diversify you never know when a ripple's coming through the industry.
Yeah.
Like what's happening over the last
licensing change of some sort.
buyouts, you never know. But it was very important that they responded. And it was a good place.
So how far are you into this journey now? And because it is a journey. And some say would have thought it was a sprint. Some think it's a marathon, depending on which type of organization.
Yeah.
Where is SiriusXM these days?
It's a little of each, right? You need to really be comfortable with it. The engineers have to own it. You can't rely on as good as the partners are. You own it.
Right.
It's coming out of your data center, in some cases. So, it's, when they're comfortable with it, then you can move to the next step and then keep pushing. When they're screaming to say, we need to migrate tomorrow, that's when it's time. So you got to keep a clear ear out,
So you said you had experience with Rev, which was a previous product that no longer around, but it kind of went down that it was the virtualization on top of Red Hat Linux at one point in time. And I think where it makes more sense is in OpenShift and what has been done. Has also your experience been that because you own ops, so to me, I'm thinking there, to Venkat's point about TCO, the cost to manage and the simplification, was that factoring into your decision to go this direction?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was most of it. Again, industry changes, new players show up, and you have to be able to move quickly to another platform at times. So depending on what that is, at the time, but it hits all those marks, right? It's low cost of ownership. It's on-prem. You can use it wherever you want, right? You can push it out to any one of your cloud providers. So it's kind of an integrated ecosystem, as far as you want to take it, as far out to the edge, or if you want to keep it inside the data center as well. So, and we utilize all portions of it, to be honest. I mean, and again, even from the storage point of view, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that fits. So
I think to jump in on it, when you mentioned about the migrating quickly, it makes me think about how our customers, right? These are the critical workloads that are powering their digital business, but they also have time frames that they want to be able to execute on. So how with a bunch of our customers, we're migrating hundreds of VMs every day. But again, that's almost like the step one of the journey. They're migrating to OpenShift because it's the platform of the future where they can modernize, which is some of the work that you guys are now starting to undertake as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing worse from an operations point of view of having to get downtime moving out. You want everything to be completely disconnected from the underlying infrastructure as much as possible. They should leverage it as much as possible, but, who wants to patch servers? Hey, can I get an outage on Tuesday night? Nah, we're doing billing. All right, let me try Sunday, you know what I mean? And you end up in this weird round-the-clock situation. So the last time you do that is migrating them to a new platform or containerization. That's it. You're free and clear after that. So,
and then when you start to get into containerization, that's when you get some of the real benefits, the real TCO benefits from the platform, right?
Absolutely. Now you're getting into very hyper-converged, you're maxing your processors out. That has a concept of millicore, not a whole core. So you're starting to really, make your hardware work for you.
So. And like you said, though, I would assume that this is kind of where Portworx by storage, pure storage. My brain is it's the lights today. But when you look at Portworx by pure storage and what it helps you do, it must give you that confidence, again, giving you kind of like that cyber resilience as well as that underlying storage layer that gives you that flexibility where you, again, just having been on the IT side, it's been a long time, and I own DR for a financial services company.
Yeah.
For me, I had to know that I could recover at any point in time, and we couldn't be down because that was millions and millions of dollars per second kind of thing. That must, again, you're live on air all the time across all these platforms. That had to be a big factor for you.
It was. You're going to look for a really good CSI in Kubernetes or OpenShift. You really want a solid CSI, and especially when it's backed by the hardware that's already in the data center. That's huge. Being able to, live migrate things, come up with many different tiers of storage. You can shoot stuff out to the X90s, high performance, low latency, and then we got some C70s for, general purpose, FlashBlade for just dumping tons of data. So if that's your storage subsystem, it doesn't really make sense to put like Ceph on top of a flash array. That's too expensive. Ceph shines. We have massive Ceph deployment, but JBODs, right? So when it comes to high performance, we need it to be real close to the storage. So integrated is great.
Absolutely, right? So what we have done in this case, SiriusXM uses Portworx Enterprise, right? Which is, of course, the upstream interface, the CSI interface to the Kubernetes driver, right? To the platform. But what Portworx Enterprise does is that it takes their flash array estate and creates a global storage cloud, for lack of a better word, right? We call it an enterprise data cloud, where Portworx kind of blankets on top of the multiple deployments they have, flash arrays and flash blades, and gives them a Kubernetes native declarative way of deploying and managing resources, right? That OpenShift works tightly integrated with OpenShift, manages all the underlying storage infrastructure, and delivers essentially storage as a service per VM. And eventually, when they bring in containers, it'll be per container, right? So now that's, literally like how the infrastructure is being built. So it becomes a lot easier as we scale the infrastructure to essentially go like Lego blocks, right? You can build out an entire private cloud, a VM data cloud, with OpenShift virtualization or OpenShift, Portworx Enterprise, and FlashArray and FlashBlade that meets Sirius's, workload needs, SLA needs, and of course DR and recovery.
Yeah, it makes sense. And again, like Ed was talking about hundreds of VMs, in a day, a night, a weekend. How did you approach it? Did you say, hey, we're going to start with this application that's on this cluster over here. We're going to bring it over and we're going to, get our methodologies down. And because I'm thinking of patterns that others who are watching this could think about, hey, I want to, we have OpenShift. Let's go do that because we can simplify our operations. What was your pattern that got you to where you are today?
Well, OpenShift KubeVirt under the hood is KVM, right? It's essentially a Virt launcher wrapper for a KVM version instance, right? So, we're familiar with that, from our Linux side of the house. And, it was kind of an easy transition for us over to KubeVirt OpenShift virtualization specifically. But, for the most part, start with lower environments, dev, right? Let's get the devs out of the way, make sure nothing breaks. Now let's get staging up there, sit, QA. And before you know it, the last thing is left is prod. So, as soon as you got to the production, instances is pretty much as fast as, at that point, you're extremely comfortable with. So you're like, okay, we're good. We got our monitoring, the belts and suspenders. Portworx is really good about calling us out and saying with, some of the telemetry that we activate, saying, hey, may want to take a look at this. And we've been in situations where it wasn't necessarily the right size, but we were able to back out of that decision. Yeah. And on the fly, in the middle of a maintenance window, we got 300-400 VMs coming in. We need more storage. Click a button, not click a button. Type a few commands in there, hit enter, and there it goes. So it starts resizing itself. So that's another really good aspect.
It automatically looks at your workload and resizes the available storage.
Yeah.
So they don't have to do it manually per their hypervisor node, right?
Yeah.
And to talk about simplifying operations, what Nate and I were talking about it too, is to how Portworx and Pure Support will call them based on the telemetry data and say where, the optimal, which things are running suboptimally and where they need to quickly tune it so they don't have a downtime, right? So we kind of dialed it in, and we were talking about how we're extending it a little bit more into, visibility into Kubernetes and OpenShift as well. So our customers jointly get a lot of visibility into their infrastructure.
When customers are looking to get started, they can depend upon like the years of experience that Red Hat has. Now, having done this with like 50, 100 plus customers like Red Hat and Portworx as well, like our teaming model, how we help the customers see like how long are these migrations going to take? Is it something that's going to take 6 months? Is it going to take 36 months? What's the risk level and the complexity? And also, like once they start getting into their day two operations, like how do they plan for like making the use of their best use of their existing hardware investment as well as their investment they've made in their people as well too?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away last year when I got to talk to one of the financial services customers. I won't mention which one because I can't remember if I can name them or not, but was talking about the first workload that they went and moved, which was their traders VDI workstations, which to me was like, okay, having been in financial services, I'm like, that's
inspire pretty quick.
Right, exactly. How did you bring your organization along with this too? Because I mean, you still have to get buy-in. I'm sure the cost of it had to help that there was a good ROI at the end of the day.
That's really it. I mean, we did want to diversify our platform from another large, hypervisor. So that's how Rev got in the door. So, if that's where OpenShift is going to pick up that slack, that's exactly what we made it do. And, it's not difficult when you're coming in pretty much under the bar, for as far as costs and, TCO, and assuming, you have good data center deals and you're not just spinning up, instances out in the cloud for no reason at all. I mean, it speaks for itself, right? So, and, I'm not going to say there's no more options, but, it's as far as the good options, I mean, it's there, right? And now we're starting to integrate, with, again, just pure containerization, not just virtualization as well.
So you're doing that transformation as well now.
Yeah, the virtualization we got pretty much locked down. We were like, okay, now it's time to move. Remember, we're talking about virtualization, but thousands of these VMs run tens of thousands of containers. The end goal is just get those containers off of the VMs, right? That's really where we're trying to get to. Right. So that was from day one, my goal. And get everybody else on board with just cost. Hey, this is going to help us out.
See, that's the vision of modern enterprises, right? Yeah. I mean, it's something that I tell all our customers is that, but if you look at the modern data centers, or even on the cloud, like people are running VMs in a one control plane today, like there's a legacy architecture, and then the containers in another control plane, in another, like Kubernetes, right? But now you have these islands of infrastructure with different software orchestrators that proliferate, and it makes what an already an IT environment that is very complex, it makes it even more complex, right? So what generally great enterprise IT organizations try to continue to simplify their architecture is a journey, the transformational journey, right? So standardizing on OpenShift, which is Kubernetes based, and standardizing on that virtualization to get off of legacy VM platforms makes absolute sense because that's your journey to continue to simplify, right? To go to containers.
And you think about it, you've got your hybrid cloud with OpenShift, running your hybrid workloads, whether they're VMs or containers, with your Portworx, there's like, there's running the layer over like whatever underlying stories there might be, pure or other. And then you're setting yourself up for the future of modernization, where you're modernizing your storage, you're also modernizing, you're getting a real return on investment once you start going to cloud-native development and containers, where now, hey, instead of taking a week to deploy an application, you're going to deploy it in 5 minutes. Instead of taking a week to scale, application or a VM, like maybe again, you can do it in like 5 minutes, or it can happen automatically. That's where you start getting the real like TCO and ROI benefits.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, you nailed it, right? So take it to hybrid cloud, then now you have the same control plane for not just your data center on-prem assets, but hey, your cloud infrastructure too.
Yeah.
That is the real power of Kubernetes, right? So when people have this opportunity to look at new alternatives for legacy virtualization platforms, I think Kubernetes and OpenShift virtualization is a no-brainer, right? Added that with Portworx, now you're hybrid cloud ready, you're running the data center, and we can, of course, we run on top of Pure. We have best-in-class integrations, but we can also run on top of other vendors too, right? And you can essentially replicate that architecture in the cloud and then be hybrid cloud ready, within a matter of, within a day, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
So Nate, I'm going to give you the last word. What do you hope to be able to say next year when you're on with us talking about where you've gotten to?
I'd love to get rid of virtualization, just go all containerization, but that's not going to happen. We all have appliances and things like that. They need to be powered, right? But, I want to get some more critical workloads containerized. Again, they're already containerized, just running in VMs. I want to get them really orchestrated,
pure out there.
exactly,
Yeah.
where
Bare metal containers.
where applications teams don't have to think, where do I want this green, blue, canary? They click a few buttons, from either ACM or whatever orchestration system, and say, if you want your workload out in this cloud provider, push it out there for a while. If the prices come down, somebody has a good deal, move it over here. And it should not be that difficult. So that's really, now it's really getting the application teams and developers fully engaged, into leveraging it the way it should be. I can only do so much for them. I can create the infrastructure and, operate it, but it needs to click up here so they can start moving things around and, really getting there. So
I love that. Yeah. So I want, fantastic. Thanks for coming on, Nate.
Sure.
Ed, Venkat, as always, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for having us, Rob. As always, fantastic interview.
Always fun.
thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode, our closing episode for today at Red Hat Summit and Ansible Fest 2025 live from Boston. We'll be back with much more, a full day tomorrow and Wednesday. Stay tuned and see you soon.